Now, back in 1966, the BBC played just 2 hours of rock and roll each week. I know, unbelievable, isn't it? But Pirate Radio played it around the clock and attracted 25 million listeners as a result.
And guess what? I was one of them. I loved it. Well, today, one old pirate, BBC Radio Kent's Dave Cash, met Tony Benn, the government minister who tried to close them down. It's all to mark the premiere of The Boat That Rocked, a new comedy film which tells the story of the floating radio stations.
It's a film to celebrate those who brought pop music to the masses and their battle with the government to stay afloat.
Thought we'd never die, but you can't fight City Hall. 3, 2, 1. Only kidding, dudes! Let's rock!
I don't think it will ever happen again. You went from your mum and dad's music, kind of crooners in suits, to Jimi Hendrix burning his guitar, or to The Who, or to the Stones, you know, and it was a huge leap, which won't ever be required ever again, I don't think, because everything's kind of leapt. But it was a marvellous phenomenon.
Disgusted at the lack of new music on the BBC, several new radio stations sprung up in the 60s. But without licences to broadcast, the only way to dodge the law was to put down anchor just outside British waters. The government did not approve.
And I don't believe at all that the public wouldn't support action to enforce the law.
Today, in a studio on dry land, Radio Kent presenter and one-time pirate Dave Cash got to question the former minister charged with shutting down the illicit broadcasts.
The problem was they were broadcasting on wavelengths allocated to other countries and the musicians weren't getting royalties. That was my problem, but I was presented as a killjoy.
We're going to shut them down.
There's a sort of rites of passage moment for everyone, I think, with music, where you moments like pirate radio, where the experience of listening to music is also you know, an exciting and sort of dangerous and rather illicit one, means that all the music that you hear at that time is extremely memorable for the rest of your days.
In the end, a new law put a stop to pirate radio, and with the start of Radio 1, the Beeb at last welcomed aboard many of those former floating DJs.
Now, the explosion of the British pop music in the 60s was anchored on the pirate radio stations of the day. Last night, we got a glimpse of what life on the high seas was like at the height of the station's popularity. It was the premiere of a new film called The Boat That Rocked. As Sally Biddulph reports, it brought back oceans of musical memories and brought out the paparazzi and their flash guns.
Take me to the microphone. I need to broadcast.
Yeah. The birth of pop radio in the swinging 60s, now the subject of a new film, The Boat That Rocked. At the premiere, the stars were out, along with a living rock legend.
It was very exciting, you know, the fact that the pirates were setting up and playing good music. That's what I remember.
I think the best bit for me, without question, was the day it turned into a sort of Elvis Presley movie and we all had to dance all day on a boat in the middle of the ocean with blue skies, dancing to a massively loud recording of Martha and the Vandellas doing Dancing in the Street.
The Boat That Rocked celebrates the heyday of pirate radio broadcasting in the 60s. It's based on the story of Radio Caroline, which broadcast pop music to more than 20 million people when it was moored off the coast of Felixstowe.
This is Radio Caroline on 199, England's first commercial radio station. My name's Simon D, with you for the next 2 hours. First one off the top of the pile, the Hollies, Rockin' Robin.
Until the late 60s, the BBC only broadcast 2 hours of pop music a week, so pirate radio filled the void. Richard Curtis, who wrote the film, was inspired by the 60s soundtrack, but also the battle between the DJs and the government.
These people were breaking that law. I think they also did use the excuse of the fact that they weren't paying, even though the record companies were absolutely delighted because it meant that more people heard their music and therefore more people bought their records. I think I'll be interested to hear what Tony Benn says now.
In 1966, Tony Benn, then the Postmaster General, said this.
Pirates are a menace, and I don't believe at all that the public wouldn't support action.
A year later, his Marine Broadcasting Offences Act spelt the end for Radio Caroline. But 40 years on, he admits he was a fan.
I used to listen to pirates, so did the Prime Minister rang me up once and he was listening to it. The problem was that the pirate stations were using wavelengths allocated to other countries, and they said, if you do that, we're going to broadcast on BBC wavelengths.
So a battle for the airwaves, fought at sea and possibly won by the pirates. Sally Biddulph, ITV News.